Hi guys, this week we are talking about cell types and most specifically about protists. Before we start talking about protists, we need to know the two different types of cells. The first is prokaryotic. Prokaryotic is a word that comes from Greek. It means before nucleus. So it's basically saying that these cells evolved before cells had a nucleus. They were the simplest cells and they're the oldest. They were the first living things. Some prokaryotic cells are actually called archaea, which means archaic, very old. Bacteria are the only cells that are prokaryotic. So you can see in the picture here that they're lacking a lot of the organelles that we talked about last week. They're very simple because they were the first living things. So living things that are prokaryotic have ribosomes because every living thing has to be able to make proteins. They have cytoplasm, they have DNA or RNA, that's a requirement of living things. They have a plasma membrane, and they have a cell wall or a capsule to protect them. They do not have a nucleus, so their DNA is just floating around in the cell. They don't have a mitochondria, and they don't have any of the other vacuoles that we talked about, or organelles that we talked about last week, including vacuoles. Because they're so simple, they're also very small. They're unicellular, which means that the whole living thing is only made of one cell, and they're bacteria. They're not visible to humans because they're so tiny, they're microscopic. They are not multicellular, so humans are multicellular. They're made of more than one cell. Prokaryotic organisms are not, and they are not humans, plants, or protists, or fungi. The second type of cell is eukaryotic, also a Greek word. Eu means true, and karyo means nucleus. These are the type of cells that you have, so you can remember that you are eukaryotic. All eukaryotic cells have a true nucleus, which you can see here. It's this purple thing. Around the nucleus, of course, is the ER, mitochondria. You might recognize these from cellcraft. They're centrosomes. Here's a Golgi body, of course, cytoplasm, and a plasma membrane as well. Plants, animals, fungi, and protists are all eukaryotic organisms. So basically everything except for bacteria is eukaryotic. Eukaryotic cells have all the organelles that we've talked about. It is important to note that not every eukaryotic cell will have every organelle. That's because cells are specialized to do certain jobs, and so they have certain organelles that other ones may not have. There's nothing that eukaryotic cells do not have. They can have all the organelles. But like I said before, some may be lacking or have extra of certain organelles. The best way to recognize a eukaryotic cell if you're looking at a picture is with a nucleus. So you won't see any free-floating DNA because it will be inside the nucleus. Eukaryotic organisms are usually multicellular. However, there's some exceptions to that rule. Protists are unicellular, and so are some fungi. Plants, animals, protists, and fungi are all eukaryotic, and they are larger than prokaryotic organisms. Usually, like I said before, they are not unicellular. However, that's not always true, and they are not bacteria. Here's an organizer that will tell you a little bit about the different cell types. Today we're going to focus on protists. So they're very diverse. Protists are sometimes called the junk drawer kingdom of life because they are kind of just the extra things that didn't fit into the plant category or the animal category or the fungus category. They are eukaryotic, they are alive, they have several different ways of moving, they have a nucleus, they are eukaryotic, and they're usually found in fresh water. They're still so small that you can't see them, but in like pond water or in lakes or rivers, they are living there. You just don't see them. Here are some special organelles that are found in protists. These are all things that are used for movement. So cilia are tiny little projections that look like hair or eyelashes that go around the outside of the cell. Humans also have cilia inside of your lungs, in your bronchioles, that are used to push mucus up and out of your lungs to keep your lungs from getting filled with mucus. Flagella are long whip-like tails. If there's only one, then it will say flagellum, so one flagellum or many flagella. Human sperm cells also have flagella, which they use to swim. Pseudopods is another Greek word. Pseudo means fake and pod means foot. So a podiatrist is a doctor that studies feet. Pseudopods are used for movement, but also for feeding, which we're going to talk more about in just a minute. Okay, now we're going to talk about 4 common protists. The first one is an amoeba. Amoebas are unicellular protists. You can see a real one here. They are eukaryotic, so they have a nucleus. You can see that's the purple shape inside the cell. They are animal-like, so that means that they are heterotrophs. Heterotrophs are things that have to eat other things in order to stay alive. So plants are the only things that are not heterotrophs. Animals are heterotrophs, you are a heterotroph. If you cannot use photosynthesis to make your own food, you're a heterotroph. Amoebas use pseudopods to move, but also to engulf their prey. So if they had a cell that they were trying to eat that's right over here, they could use these pseudopods to move out here and to connect, which would trap their food inside the cell, and they would use enzymes to digest it. And it would end up in one of these food vacuoles. The pseudopods are just made of cytoplasm, so they can move around really easily. Another common protist is Euglena. Euglena are unicellular and plant-like, so they are autotrophs. They can make their own food. Auto means you can do it by yourself. Euglena use flagella to move. This one has 1 flagellum. It has chloroplast, which it used to make its own food, and also has a special thing called an eye spot, which it uses to sense light. That's really important because in order to do photosynthesis, there has to be sunlight. The third common protist is Volvox. So Volvox are unicellular, but they live in a colony. So what you're seeing here are several unicellular protists that are living together in a group. They're plant-like, so they're autotrophs. They can make their own food, and they have chloroplast. So plant-like, autotroph, and chloroplast are words that you will see together a lot. This is also the reason they're green, because chloroplasts have chlorophyll. They use cilia to move. It's hard to see in this picture, but there are little eyelash-like things going around the outside of their round shape. The last common protist that we're going to talk about today is a paramecium. The plural would be paramecia. They're also unicellular. They are animal-like heterotrophs. They use cilia to move, so you can see going around the outside are those little hair-like projections. They would crawl along kind of like a millipede in the water. They have special organelles called contractile vacuoles, which they use to push out extra water. It's important because, remember, they're living in freshwater places. So if they get too much water in them, they could burst, which would be really bad. So they use these special contractile vacuoles to push extra water out. They also have an oral groove and a gullet for feeding, so they can eat their prey in this thing that's kind of like a mouth. All right, so to review, prokaryotic cells are very simple cells that do not have a nucleus. They're very small and they are bacteria. Eukaryotic cells are more complex cells that have organelles and a true nucleus. Protists are a very diverse kingdom of life that include organisms that are plant-like and animal-like. They usually live in fresh water and they are eukaryotic. That's it for this time. See you next week. Bye.